In this video, I'm going to discuss the 4 main kinds of handheld sanders and the reasons why you would want to use a specific one for a certain job and what they're best suited for overall. Alright, so the first sander I'm going to discuss is the corner cat sander. These are usually your smallest sanders. They're sometimes called palm sanders as well. And they typically are your cheapest sander that you can buy. And they are really great for getting into tight corners because of the pointed edge that you have on them. Now, they're not so great with sanding large surfaces because this is usually your smallest sanding pad that you'll have on a motorized hand sander. So I would recommend this as probably an initial starting sander if you're just starting out, because of the fact that you have that ability to get into tight spaces, which the other sanders don't have. But just understand that if you have to do larger surfaces like a full sheet of plywood, or you're just doing a large amount of wood at one time, understand that this is not your most time efficient sander to have when doing large areas. Now, moving on to the next one, we have what's known as the 1/4 sheet sander. And the reason why it's called a 1/4 sheet sander is that when you buy sanding paper, it takes a quarter of that piece of sandpaper in here. So as far as sandpaper goes, and for this sander itself, it's usually the cheapest to buy sandpaper for this device. And that's because you can buy it in those larger pieces that are not specialty cut like your corner cat is, and then you can just cut off what you need for this device. So I've seen sandpaper as cheap as $3 for 5 sheets of it, which is extremely cheap compared to a lot of the other sanders. It's usually similar priced towards your corner cat end, so usually around the $40 range. It is also sometimes known as a orbital sander, so even though it's a square and you normally think like orbital, you think something round, it's the motion that the sanding device moves in, and it does create an orbit. This is more effective at sanding larger surfaces, but it can also leave a circular motion onto your surface. So if you're trying to avoid having your surface look like it had been buffed away essentially, this isn't necessarily the best device for that. But it will do larger surfaces quicker than the corner cat can do, but you don't have that ability in tight spaces. If you like this video and found it helpful so far, then make sure to hit that subscribe button. Leave us a comment down below if you have a preferred sander here, so that way you can help out those newbies who are looking at which one would be best for them. Alright, moving on, we have the random orbit sander. Alright, so random orbit sanders are typically more expensive than your corner cat or your sheet sanders. And the sandpaper is going to be more expensive as well due to the fact that they're cut out in circles. But as far as doing larger surfaces and having a smoother finish in the long run, this is a better sander than the other two. So the random orbit is different than the orbital sander in the sense that even though it does a orbital motion, because of the randomness of it, it does more of an elliptical rather than just a straight circular motion the whole time. This eliminates the circular finish pattern that you might get with a sheet sander, and you ultimately get a smoother finish in the long run. You also have the benefit that you don't have to follow the wood grain like you do with typical sanders. Because of the random orbit, it won't leave it all scratched up or pulling up that grain. It's going to remove it completely, and you're just going to have a smooth finish overall. So random orbital sanders, extremely good sanders, but they are a bit pricier. Alright, last but not least, we got the belt sander. So belt sander is going to be your most expensive sanders, usually pushing around $100, if not more than $100, and sometimes even maybe up to $200 if you're getting a very nice battery-powered belt sander. Belt sanders are great for doing very large surfaces. They're also really good for removing large amounts of material. So if you need a sander that can level out a surface that's uneven, that's what a belt sander is for. There is a drawback of the belt sander though. They are typically very powerful. So for a battery operated one, they are going to deplete those batteries very quickly. If you are using a corded one, they tend to have quite a bit of power behind them, which is great as far as accomplishing your job, but they can be difficult to use if you are unused to using a sander, or you just have difficulty controlling that much power in your hands. They are great for using on, say, a deck or using on sheets of plywood, but they're not great for using for smaller projects like a 2x4 or just smaller things that you need to sand. So large projects, yes. Doing fine-tune work or smaller areas, belt sander is not your option. Alright, so there is one Ryobi sander I do not possess that they have that's battery operated, and it's another type of belt sander, but instead of using a 3-inch wide belt, it uses a 1/2 inch wide, and your motor and handles are back here, and then the belt sticks out in front, kind of like on a stick essentially, and it's made for getting into tighter places while also being able to quickly remove material. I've never found use for one, and so I just haven't bought one. But just so you know, there are 5 sanders that are battery operated from Ryobi, and I only have the 4 here. So options available for you if you found a need for something like that. Overall though, what I would recommend if you are new and you're starting out with power tools, I would recommend a corner cast sander first. It is going to be your slowest one for larger projects, but because you can get into those tight areas, you're still able to accomplish the larger project or the smaller project. It's just going to take you a longer amount of time if you're using plywood sheets or something like that. My next recommendation would probably be torn between either the sheet sander or the random orbit sander. It's really going to be kind of your preference. Sandpaper is going to be cheaper for this one, but ultimately you'll get a smoother finish with the random orbit sander, but it does cost a bit more money up front, and the sanding paper is going to cost more as well. So it's really which one you'd rather spend your money on, but better finish or cheaper to begin with. If you like this video or found it helpful, then give us a thumbs up. And if you want to see anything more about these tools and learn about their features, then I have unboxing videos that cover each of these individually, so check them out. That's it for now. We'll see you next week on Grunt Cave.